What are you hearing?
Well, Shahan, we've heard from the African Content Movement that now that the IEC has missed that deadline, they're in consultation with their lawyers and they're hoping to file papers in the Electoral Court by the end of today to make that application. At the moment, they're considering whether or not to apply for a review of the results or for the complete nullification of the entire voting day's events. Of course, they went from querying double voting to saying that all of the voting should be reviewed by this internal audit. And I spoke to some of the smaller parties just a short while ago, and they've confirmed that the IEC has not come back to them, and so they're now considering their options. And it seems as if the African Content Movement, that's Claudia Mutsaneng's party, will be one of the first parties to actually file those papers in the Electoral Court. I asked them about what kind of structure this would take. They're hoping to have a host of different applicants join them, but it seems at this stage that at least parties like the Workers' Party and BLF have not yet gone into those discussions with the ACM's lawyers. So they're leading the charge on this. They said that by the end of the day they should have those papers filed, and then we should have clarity on what basis they would be applying for the review of either the results or asking the Electoral Court if it's possible to have a rerun. Of course, 35 parties have now joined this objection, but at this stage it's not confirmed that all of those parties would take part in the court action. Most of them are still waiting for a response from the Independent Electoral Commission. It hasn't happened yet, but most of them are still hopeful that it will by the end of the day.
Any word from IEC officials about when they're going to have a media briefing? Because, of course, this is a crucial time for us to know more information about what exactly is happening.
Well, they've said that before they brief the media and the South African public, they would have to first speak to the smaller parties, and they're the ones that are really getting impatient at this stage. A lot of them have been huddled around their tables trying to get answers from the IEC, and they've just been told to be patient while they deal with this issue. Of course, we know that some of the observer missions are already saying that as far as they're concerned, the voting day happened freely and fairly, and South Africans were able to cast their votes without any hindrance. And they believe that the objections of multiple voting and alleged irregularities don't really have any bearing on the result, because there weren't that many of them, and saying that if there were upwards of 2,000 or 10,000, then it would have a material effect. But the observers at this stage are convinced that voting happened fairly, and they're convinced that the IEC would be able to handle the objections. The smaller parties, of course, saying that until the IEC agrees to that internal audit or complete audit of those voting day events, they would still want to pursue that court action. It'll be interesting to see by the end of the day how many parties actually join the ACM in applying to the Electoral Court. I tried to get some specifics of this court challenge from them, and it seems as if they're not even certain about which legal team they're using at this stage. There's a lot of confusion here on the Results Operations Center floor among the small parties about how they're going to proceed, and I think they're divided at this point on whether they should wait for the IEC to come back to them and give them an answer on the audit, or whether they should prepare the legal documents and approach the Electoral Court by the end of the day. We know of at least one party, the ACM, that's willing to go to the Electoral Court.